Pre-Calc homework 4.4. We are graphing polynomials, and this first page, it's already factored for us. So what you need to do is look at the degree of the entire problem. The degree is 4. So the degree of the polynomial is 4. The zeros are 2 and negative 2. The multiplicity is even, so it's going to touch at each 0. Now, the leading coefficient is negative, and the y-intercept, you're going to plug a 0 in here and here, so negative 1/4 times negative 2 squared is 4. I'm plugging 0 in here, and then another 4. Well, 4 times 4 is 16, and 1/4 of 16 is 4, so this is negative 4. So my zeros are at 2 and negative 2. My y-intercept is at 0, negative 4. So this graph, they're both left and right are going to be going down. So this is your basic shape. The left and the right are coming down because it's negative, leading coefficient. They're doing the same thing because it's an even degree. My y-intercept is 0, and my two zeros are touching at that because they're both, the multiplicity is even. Number 2, your zeros are 2, negative 1, and negative 3. The multiplicity of each one, that's odd, so it's going to cross through at 2. This is even, so it's going to touch at negative 1, and it's going to cross through at negative 3. The degree of this polynomial is a 4, and the leading coefficient is negative. Your y-intercept, if you plug a 0 here, and a 0 here, you get negative 1 times 0 minus 2 is negative 2. 0 plus 1 is 1, 1 squared is 1, and 0 plus 3 is 3. So you're going to get 6, 0, 6 for your y-intercept. So let's plot this, let's plug in our x-intercepts. So we have one at 2, at negative 1, and at negative 3. And again, this has a degree of 4, and it's a negative leading coefficient. At 0, 6, it's going to hit the y-axis. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this thing is going to be coming from the left. It's going to cross through at negative, I'm sorry, I have negative 1, negative 3 should be right there. Negative 3 and 2. So it's coming from this direction. It's going to cross through at negative 3. It's crossing through. It's going to come up. It's going to bounce, touch at negative 1. It's going to come back up, hit that, and it's going to go through at that. Now, if I want a better picture, what I'd want to do is plug in, let's say, negative 3, and that'll tell us how high it is. And that's up to you if you want a better graph. And even between 0 and 2, you'd want to plug in like a 1. So you'd want to find out what 1, the y value is for 1, and negative 2. But we're just graphing the general shape. Number 3, this one has a degree of 5. 3 plus 2, the degree is 5. The leading coefficient is negative. The zeros are 0 and 2. 0 and 2. And the multiplicity, this one's odd, so it's going to cross through. And this is even, it's going to touch. Now, because 0 is an intercept, it's a 0, it's also going to be a y-intercept. Because if you were to plug 0 in it, 0 times anything is 0. So this one, 0, 0, and 2. This one, because the leading coefficient is negative, it's going to come through, it's touching, no, I'm sorry, it's crossing at this 0, it's coming down, and it's going to bounce off and go down. Now, how far down is this going to loop? Well, you'd want to plug 1 in and just see how far it goes down. Number 4 is a simple quadratic. It's a U-shaped figure, very simple. The degree of this is 2. Now, how do we figure out the zeros? We'd want to see if we can factor this. This is easy to factor. So my zeros are 5 and -3. And the degree of each is odd, so it's going to cross through each one. It's not going to touch and bounce. The leading coefficient is positive. In my y-intercept, if I were to distribute this 1/4, I get 0, -15/4 is my y-intercept. So that would be -3, well, and 2 and 1/2. Let's see. 4 goes into this 3 times, that's 12, and 2/4. So that's -3.5. So -3.5. I'm sorry, 12. This is 3/4. -3 3/4 is my y-intercept. So my zeros are 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and -3. Now this is a U-shaped figure. You could take these two and average them and figure out what the axis of symmetry is, and you can draw it like that. Or you could, let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So half of that would be 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is going to be your axis of symmetry, or you can use your formula y equals -b over 2a. Now you really should, for this one, you really should find your vertex, which is, can you do that really quick? X is equal to -b over 2a. This is a review. If you were to distribute, you get 1/4 x squared, then 1/4 times -2 is -1/2 x, and then -15/4. So your b value is this right here. So it's 1/2 over 2 times a, 2 times 1/4. So 1/2 over 1/2 is equal to 1, and that's what we said. Now if you plug 1 in to figure out what your vertex is, 1 squared times 1/4 minus 1/2 minus 15/4. Now what I would do is turn this into 2/4. So you can add straight across. So 1 minus 2 is -1. -1 minus 15 is -16 over 4, which is -4. So there is your vertex. So what we have here is a complete graph. There's our parabola. Now, the difference between that one and this one, what I would do is factor out a -1. Now, what two numbers multiply to give you 16, but add to be -10? So what you have is a parabola, 8 and 2, 6, 7, 8, and this is going to be going upside down. So if you split the difference here, this would be your axis of symmetry. So 2, 3, 4, if you plugged 5 in here, -1 times 5 squared plus 10 times 5 minus 16. So you're going to get -25 here plus 50 minus 16. So that's 25. So negative 16 plus, 25 minus 16 is 9. So where's my vertex? It's 5, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we're kind of off the page here, off the graph. Now, how more accurate could you be if you would plug in numbers like 3 or 4, you could figure out some more points. Now, number 6, you need to factor completely. So for this one, I would take out an x squared. It's not very difficult to factor. X squared, and you're left with x minus 3. That one was easy to factor. So my zeros are 0 and 3. The multiplicity of each 0, that's going to touch. It's even. So it's going to touch there, and it's going to cross through at 3. The degree of the polynomial is a 3, and the leading coefficient's positive. The y-intercept is your 0, 0. So this one, we have a 0 at 0 and a 0 at 3. And because this is an odd polynomial, it's going to come this way. It's going to touch at 0 because the multiplicity is even. So it's going to come this way. It's going to touch. Now, how high up? I don't know. I would want to plug in numbers like 1 or 2 into this equation. Now, 1 would be pretty easy. If you did 1 into this, you get 1 minus 3, which is negative 2. Wait, 1. I'm sorry, this graph is wrong. It should be rising to the right. My bad. And I'm catching, by plugging that 1 in, I figured out that my graph was wrong. This one it's coming from this side. It's touching still at 0. It's coming down, and I figured out from 1, it's going down to negative 2. And it's going to cross through at 3 and go up. That's the correct graph. Because the leading coefficient's positive. It's rising to the right, falling to the left. Okay? Now the last 2 on the back, what you need to do is figure out how to factor this completely. So the degree of this polynomial is 4. The leading coefficient's positive. The zeros in the multiplicity we have to use the PQ test. And the y-intercept, that's pretty easy. It's 0, negative 4. So what you're going to do is start off by P over Q. What are the possible factors of 4? 1, 2, and 4. And what are the factors of Q, which is 1, 1. So in order, our factors from left to right are negative 4, negative 2, negative 1, 1, 2, and 4. Always start in the middle. So we're going to start with 1. Let's see if 1 works. If we put a 1 and save some room, 1, negative 4, negative 3, 4, and negative 4. So if we bring 1 down, 1 times 1 is 1. Add, multiply, add, multiply, add, and multiply. Didn't work. So let's try negative 1. Okay? If we tried negative 1, again, bring down the 1. You get negative 1. Add, multiply, add, multiply, add. Does not work. Well, let's try 2. Bring down the 1. 2 times 1 is 2. We're going to add. Multiply. We're going to add. Multiply. We're going to add. And here we go. we got our first 0. It is 2. So we have x minus 2, and what's left here is x cubed minus 2x squared minus 1x plus 2. Now we're going to break this up. Now I'm not going to use 4 because 4 is not a PQ value. So I'm going to try 2 again. 2 might work again. So I'm going to use 1, negative 2, negative 1, and 2. Bring down the 1, we get 2, and multiply, add, multiply, and we got it again. So you have x minus 2 quantity squared, so the multiplicity of that is even, and then we have x squared minus 1 left over. And that can be factored to be x minus 1, x plus 1. So what are our zeros? Our zeros are 2, 1, and negative 1, where the multiplicity of 2 is even, so it's going to touch at that 0, and it's going to cross at 1 and negative 1. So let's write our zeros. We've got negative 1, 1, and we have 2. It's going to cross through those 2, and it's going to touch at 2. So what should our graph look like? Well, it's going to cross through at negative 1 and 1, and it's going to touch and bounce at 2. And it's going to come from this way. So it's coming down, and it's going to cross through 0, negative 4 is your y-intercept. We're going to cross through, we're going to touch at 2, and we're going to shoot right back up. This is an excellent problem. Next one. Again, we have to do P over Q. Well, what are our P factors? 1, 3, 5, and 15 over plus or minus 1. So what are your factors? Well, starting from the left, negative 15, negative 5, negative 3, negative 1, and then we have 1, 3, 5, and 15. Definitely start right here in the middle. So let's start with 1. Hopefully 1 will work. We're going to put 1, 3, negative 13, negative 15. Bring down the 1, add, and that does not work. Try 3. Bring down the 1. 3 times 1 is 3, add. 6 times 3 is 18, add, and we get 15. We found our first 0. So x minus 3 is one product, and then right here is x squared plus 6x plus 5. Well, you can break this down into x plus 1 times x plus 5. So our 3 zeros are 3, negative 1, and negative 5. 3, negative 1, and negative 5. Because the degree of the polynomial is odd, and our leading coefficient's positive, our graph is going to be shaped like this. Our y-intercept is 0, negative 15, and since our zeros are all odd, it's going to cross through all of them. So we should have a 0 at negative 5, negative 1, and 3. And it's coming through here, and it's going to go all the way down to negative 15. Well, negative 15 is off our radar here. So just so you understand, this thing is coming from this direction. It's going to hit at negative 15. It's going to come up to negative 1, and it's coming down through here. Now, how far up and down is it going? Well, that's when I would want my t-chart and I would plug in numbers that are between -1 and -5, such as -4, -3, or -2. That would give me a clearer picture. Same with between, I know 0, -15 is my y-intercept, but I could be more accurate and I could plug numbers like 1, 2, and I have 3, I already know. So 1 and 2. So if I wanted a more accurate picture, and I expect that you should be able to do that for your test. And that is it.